We are here in Łódź in 30th International Festival of Comic Book, Międzynarodowy Festiwal Komiksu, Gier, with John Layman, creator of Chew and many more comic books. Hi, John.
Hello. And you know what? I think I'm here because of you. Because
Why?
I can remember coming to Warsaw and you say, I had to go to this show. And here I am.
Oh, yeah, I told you that.
Yep.
So I'm happy because this is like your third time in Poland.
Yeah.
You were in Warsaw, Poznań, now Łódź. So what will be next?
I don't know. I'll come back whenever I'm invited.
Yeah, and there will be the reason. There's a lot of reasons to have you in comic book shows because not so much recently, but it's like almost a year because there's 10th issue was released in States of Outer Darkness, your new series with Afu Chan. How does it feel to have new title like that after Chew?
Well, it's weird because I was kind of spoiled by Chew. It took me a long time to admit that Chew was a monster worldwide hit, and first of all, Outer Darkness hasn't reached beyond America yet, but it's not the instantaneous hit that Chew was. People who read it love it, and it is always growing. But Chew was a monster right out of the gate.
I didn't have the opportunity to buy floppies of Chew. I waited for the Polish editions, but I'm buying the floppies of Outer Darkness, and there's the letter section. Do you get a lot of emails from?
I don't get them. They come to Skybound, so I have no idea if this is. Do they get 3 letters or 300? I have no idea.
You only see the one that they gave to you.
Yeah, it's a different experience because Chew didn't have an editor. It was me and Rob doing everything and delivering final files. Where this, it's creator owned, but they have a stake in it. I've got I still have to go through editors, and it's more
like more corporate.
Yeah. It's more like conventional comic book making. It's less indie.
Oh, okay, I get it. But the first thing actually that I wanted to ask you, why the hell are you want to kill all of the characters in your books every time?
Well, the thing about Outer Darkness is death isn't permanent. The whole concept of Outer Darkness is there's no heaven, there's no hell. Your soul just gets cast out into space, and everything that's ever lived or died is in space and kind of lonely and angry and pissed off. So even if I kill someone, I've got. I can technically bring them back.
Well, technically yes, but would you do that every time?
Not often.
Not often.
But I can. There's hope.
There's hope. But yeah, I guess, is it like natural for you to, as a creator, to make character live, which is like biggest dig, and having good guys to have to wait a little longer to bring back or don't bring back
that's real life, isn't it?
Yeah.
The bad guys win.
Yeah.
Look at our politics.
So I was thinking, what kind of seed in your head as a writer creator? What kind of seed you have in your mind when? Wait, I have that idea about having horror story in space. At what point you have something like that?
Well, I think what really happened was I started with the Star Trek rewatch.
Oh yeah, you mentioned it in the letter section.
Yeah, I started watching Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, and just as a writer, you're naturally you see stories and more stories spin out, and I've always liked the the continuing space mission genre. And I also like there's a movie called Event Horizon, which isn't a good movie, but there's a lot of kind of germs of a good idea there. And there's not enough movies I can name, but I always love like horror in space. Aliens. That's the classic example. But like supernatural horror is super cool, and I don't have enough of it. Like I can't go to the video store and find a bunch of supernatural horror sci-fi. And I've always been the believer in write what you want to read. and I was very into both horror and kind of Star Trek at the time, and so the world doesn't have it. I'm going to give it to him. I'm going to write a Star Trek horror comic.
I was wondering, I don't know how much time you have for watching TV series and cartoons, but I guess you are a fan of cartoons and animation, or not so much.
Some, I mean.
Did you ever watch? It's kind of fresh series. It's called Final Space.
No,
I
never even heard of it.
Okay, so check it out, because when I was reading Outer Darkness, I was like, wait a second. It's kind of similar to Final Space, because there's kind of space horror motifs.
Oh. Well, they've also, I didn't know this because I'm not a gamer, but they're like, oh, this is like Warhammer. And then I looked it up, well, I guess it is.
So I will, and the like Outer Darkness is, the title is also something in the book. Like there is that Outer Darkness that like plays in the end of the space. So the cartoon Final Space, the Final Space is also some other place, and you have that main character who is kind of dick, and there's some horror elements of it, and so it's kind of similar in the tone. So I was wondering if you know that. And
no, I didn't. And this was, my wife actually came up with the title, and then I realized it was a Bible quote.
Oh yeah.
And then I realized, because I live not on purpose, but I live in a very heavily Mormon community in Arizona, and to them, outer darkness is worse than hell. Like bad people go to hell, really bad people go to outer darkness, and it's like a thing. And I go to the gym, and there's all these Mormon women there, and they're like, "Oh, are you Mormon? How else? Outer darkness is like." I didn't know. I just thought it was a cool title. But it's one of those things where it kind of cuts deeper than it meant to.
There's quote from the Bible in the first issue, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and there's the outer darkness in the Bible, means hell. And I'm not a religious person, but if you're writing a supernatural horror thing, that's it's a good title, and it's good to have to find meaning.
Yeah. Well, so if you have time, try out the Final Space.
Okay.
It's something similar.
Where did it come out? Is it Japanese?
No, it's American. It's definitely on the first season is on Netflix. It's cooperated with I think the company of what name is Coco.
Conan O'Brien.
Yeah, Conan O'Brien. He's one of the producers.
Is it funny?
Yeah, it's very funny, but it's maybe kind of like Chew, but it's very funny. But when it cuts. It's in the hearts in some moments. So check it out if you have time. And there's the season finale of second season just went on air, so there's some episodes to watch. Staying on the Outer Darkness, I was wondering how do you came up with all the designs of the characters? Did you have any specifics for?
No, I mean 90% of that was Afu, and again this was a blind date. We were set up, and you hope it's gonna work out. It doesn't always, and he is a genius, and part of his genius is character design and spaceship design, and now I don't even like, hey, here's a scientist, he's a non-human, or here's a a spacecraft. And the crazy thing is, Afu's got this really weird biography, and I'm not sure. I know he's Chinese, I know he's lived in China, I know he's lived in Mexico, and I know he's lived in America, and I've been traveling around a lot, and I've really sort of learned that representation really does matter. Like I went to India, and they called me on stage for a panel, and they don't really know Chew. I was there for Batman, and they're like, "Oh, why don't you have an Indian character in Chew?" And I'm like, "I do, motherfucker."
Yes.
and not only that, it's like he's a badass, and he's like a NASA scientist, and they were so happy to see, and India, with 1 billion people and an emerging middle class, is the largest developing emerging market for English speaking
yes.
comics, and also, I'm visiting all these Indian temples, and they've got all this like great mythology and demons and stuff like that. So I've got 2 Indian characters in Outer Darkness, and and it's not a cynical way to I'm not saying I want the Indian market. I'm trying to be respectful, because there are fans who like want to see themselves in there, and also they've got this great mythology, great design, and so Afu, like we're really playing with like one of the funnest things is because there's like demons in every mythos.
Oh yeah.
So we're digging into Chinese mythology, Indian mythology, Norse mythology. Like the funny thing about Chew was the only time I did research was when I was doing the food names, which were like a like a mishmash of like Latin and Greek and root words. Mm-hmm. My favorite sort of research for Outer Darkness is every ship, every star cluster, everything is some old evil demon or ancient god or something like that, and it's really you can do a Google search and like every single star system or ship has meaning.
Yeah, speaking about gods, what gave you idea to make a god as a engine for the spaceship?
Yeah. It's funny that there's certain things that just grab, that's I think the thing that really kind of nails the first issue and gets you hooked. Although I haven't really done anything in the first arc, and I'm aware of that. But yeah, the God engine plays a role.
Oh yeah, because God engine. Now you feed them. What?
Yeah, the engine of the Outer Darkness ship is fueled by a captive god, and they feed him human sacrifices to power the engine.
Well, I don't want to talk too much about spoilers, but there are some things that you didn't mention in the first issues. Like I think the most interesting thing was when the readers finds out when exactly in time the story happens in 1 century in human history, let's say.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was like in the issues 5 or 6 with the new Catholic character.
Yeah. You know what? That's funny because I actually wanted to push it further back, and Skybound didn't want it that far, and I was like, you pick your battles, and it's like, well, okay, that's not really worth a fight with an editor. But, I wanted it to be like the 32nd century, and they're like, that's too far. Let's have it the 28th, and it's like, okay. I'm not gonna fight with you over this. But my thoughts were, because they have the technology to regrow bodies. If you die, so I think if they had that, people would age differently. That if you could regrow your body, you wouldn't feel bad about taking a spaceship or hibernating for 80 years. So I think time would actually move faster. You could live for hundreds of years. You set it in the future, and it's not going to be that far. And I could have explained this to the editor and had a big fight, but at the end of the day, we're just trying to get an issue out, and I don't this is a lesson I've learned in comics. A lot of younger creators want everything to be perfect, and they I worked with a writer one time, and he's like had the artist, he's like, well, the guy drew his watch on his left hand, but this guy's more of a right brain thinker, and because he's creative, or whichever the brain is, side is the creative hemisphere, and he's like, he should move the watch. And it's like, dude, that's a ridiculous request. You have to ask yourself, is the reader going to notice? Is it going to pull them out of the book? And because if it does, that ruins the reading experience. But the flip side of that is, are you going to ask an artist for every stupid correction you can think of? So, because eventually you're going to demoralize the artist. He's going to hate working with you, and he's not going to give you the best work, he or she. So the first thing I asked myself, and even with some Chew things, Rob did some stuff I didn't like, and I'm like, well, is the reader going to notice? Is it going to diminish their enjoyment? And when I realize it doesn't, then I back off, because that's the cardinal rule. Is as long as the reader doesn't know how the sausage made and is happy, then you're fine.
How exactly the process of finding artists to the book looks?
Finding artists?
Yeah, finding artists for your book, because
it's a freaking nightmare.
Yeah, but do you? Is it something that usually the publisher do for you, or are you looking?
Depends on if you own it. If it's an Image book, you find the artist. Because I pitched Chew to Image, and they're like, "Well, hey, we like it, but we don't set people up. Find an artist, and if it's a good artist, we'll publish Chew." Whereas with Outer Darkness, which is through Skybound, which is more of a company, we had, if I would have brought them an artist, it might have been fine, but I didn't have an artist, so there was lots of discussions. And like, if you're working for, Marvel or DC, like, you don't even know who they're gonna, hook you up with. I did a Guardians of the Galaxy story with Gamora meeting She-Hulk, and it's some space assassin goes down to Earth, and he's got the mission is kill the Green Girl, and you think he's supposed to go after Gamora, he goes after She-Hulk instead. But I got set up with this guy named Otto Schmidt. I'd never heard of him, and it's like, all right, this is just that's a gig, that's working in the big two. Otto Schmidt is a god. And I had no idea. And I have since, I look at his work and I'm just drooling because it's so beautiful. But you never know who you're going to get set up with.
Otto Schmidt he was in Łódź
2 years ago.
with Jim Lee. He got published, his Green Arrow was published in Poland, and I can...
It's beautiful.
Yes. Well, sometimes I see on you, I think it was on your Twitter feed, where you had pictures of your original artwork from other artists.
Oh yeah.
And
I have a nice art collection.
Yeah, and that's just get in your heart that I want this man art or female artist art on my wall, but well, it costs a lot.
It does.
And it's good that it costs a lot, because
Well, I got lucky. I mean, I'm old. There was a point where Dave Sim, I was really into Cerebus, and we're talking 1991, 1992. He did an American tour, and he was selling pages for $100, which is nothing these days. But a kid who's out of college, $100 might as well have been $1,000.
Oh yeah.
But I followed him. I was such a fan that he'd go to LA one week, I would go to LA and I'd buy a page. He'd go to San Diego 2 weeks later, I'd go there, and I could only spend $100, but I did. And then there was one time, I guess I lived in San Diego at the time. He went to Phoenix, and I drove there, and it was either buy a page or get a hotel. And so I slept on the side of the road so I could afford a page. But I've got that page on my wall. It's probably worth thousands of dollars now, which, I don't care what it's worth. But who cares that I slept on the road? I've got this page. And then as an editor, you kind of get artwork for free, which, you work on a book with an artist, they often gift you a page. And I got a lot of good stuff that way. And just being in comics since 1995, you tend to acquire a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Now I did a Godzilla series, and Jeff Darrow did the covers. Jeff Darrow is a god, and he had the cover for sale for $1,000, and I didn't have $1,000 in my pocket at the moment, and so I let it go. And it's Godzilla by Jeff Darrow, based on my own book. And that was my biggest life regret. So I did a book for Frank Quietly. Frank Quietly did a cover for me years ago in 1991. The art dealer found the piece of art. And it was a little expensive, but it was Frank Quietly for my own book. And I wasn't going to let the Jeff Darrow situation happen again. So I bought it, and it hurt when I was handing over the money, but now 4 months later, it's on my wall, and it's the best money I ever spent.
Do you know how many pieces of art you have in your collection?
No.
A lot?
Less than 50.
Okay.
I think. 50-ish. You know, a lot of it's on my wall, and then I have a funny deal with Rob Guillory where I got a page per arc of Chew.
Ooh.
And every time there's a bed page, you know, when it's like a splash of someone in bed, I got every single bed page. And then you know, when there was an arc with like, you know, more than one, you know, I'd buy the other one from him. But you know, I've got a you know, he gave me a cover. You know, I've got like the first. I don't have the first page of Chew, but I've got the first appearance of Tony page, and like he did a double page splash, and I wanted a splash, so I've got a decent collection of Chew pages, and Bay City Jive. Like, you know, if you can get pages of your own book, you know, nothing's going to mean more to you. Yeah. So you know, I've got a fair collection of my own stuff. I probably have more like 70 pieces.
Okay. So speaking of collections, how many comic books do you have?
Not that many. All my comics, all my like short boxes were at my parents' house at one point, which flooded. And that was my Dark Knight Returns. Those were my Watchmen. Those were my, like, that was the primo stuff. And then when you work at DC, you get comps of everything, and once you get like 30 comics a week for free, it makes it really hard to like care about, like, you start like colorist David Barron went to my house one day, and he was in my garage, and I have comics laying everywhere, and you know, they're trashed. I put them in my back pocket. You know, I read them, but I don't collect them. And he picks up this dog-eared, you know, detective, and he's like, God damn it, this is a $200 book. So yeah, I mean, I don't have much of a collection, and I buy a lot digitally these days just to reduce on clutter. Like, if it's not a sure thing, I kind of hate to buy digitally. It still feels dirty to me. But I often, like, if I find a book I love, then I'll buy it digitally, but then I'll buy the most beautiful hardcover collection. Yeah. And so I don't have like a lot of like short boxes of comics, but I've got like a trophy case of like, you know, absolute editions and this, you know, beautiful hardcover. And you know, if you can make the most beautiful, expensive book, and I love the book, you know, I'll buy it.
Do you have still in your collection the like first ever comic book you ever bought?
No, it's gone.
The flood. Oh yeah. So every book was damaged.
Well, every book that was at my parents, which was like the permanent collection. I mean, our house, a levee broke, and our house at one point was 16 feet underwater. So.
Oh my God.
Yeah, nothing. My Legos survived. My Star Wars figures survived. They were smelly for a couple of years. You know, everything that was plastic survived, but every book was gone. So it was an ugly, you know, purge of my childhood.
Oh, do you remember what book was your first?
Yeah, it was probably like Star Wars 7 or 8, because
the classic Marvel.
Yeah, I mean, because again, we've established I'm old, and like when I was growing up, like as a kid, we're talking pre-VCR. Like, you know, only the rich families, you know, had these newfangled VCR devices, and I love Star Wars. And there was, you know, in my little farm town in California, there was 3 theaters, and once Star Wars was gone, it was gone. And man, my dream was to, you know, I wanted to see Star Wars every day. So suddenly I discovered there were these Star Wars comics with continuing adventures of Han Solo and Chewbacca and Luke and all that. You know, so I could go to the corner 7-Eleven and at least get a monthly fix of Star Wars every month. And then I started, you know, there was no Star Wars this week, but I got 35 cents in my pocket. I'm going to buy Micronauts. I'm going to buy, you know, Shogun Warriors or ROM, and then eventually I, you know, started reading superhero stuff, you know, but I read Star Wars and licensed stuff first, and then that led to Marvel, and then I was never that big a DC guy growing up. You know, I liked Batman and like George Perez, Teen Titans, but I've always been primarily a Marvel guy.
Well, you wrote some books for Marvel in your career.
Yeah.
Which one was your favorite to work with?
Well, I mean, Gambit was my longest run, and I did Marvel Zombies versus Army of Darkness,
Yes.
which was a lot of fun. And like I said, the Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't think I can pick one favorite. Like,
Okay.
I'm happy for all. I did a Gambit issue where his sex tape gets mailed to Rogue, and Kitty Pryde has these bad young mutants that she wants to like scare straight, and wants Gambit to like kind of instruct these kids to be good. But instead, he recruits them to help steal his sex tape. Which, like, the fact that I got away with like writing that, like, that's probably my favorite issue of the Gambit run.
I was aware recently about similar story in with Johnny Storm in Fantastic Four with Spider-Man, that there was something similar. So I guess sex tapes stories are pretty fun to write.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't written a ton for Marvel, but I had written for Marvel kind of regularly, and it's weird because there's politics in comics, and I can't get hired at Marvel under the new regime, and that's just the way it is. Like I went for a long period where DC editors wouldn't hire me, and now I'm getting work at DC and Marvel. It's always one or the other, and you can't pick, and you can't obsess about it, and things change. What happened was everyone has their editors, and everyone has editors that want to work with you. They realize you're not a pain, they hire you, and my Marvel editors are gone now, and one of them's back at DC, which is why I'm getting DC work again. But editors tend to stick with the people that they know they can get their best stories with, and won't be headaches.
Yeah, speaking of DC, you mentioned that you're going back in a few one-shots, I think, horror, more like stories.
Yeah, I did a Dead Man story, I did a John Constantine story, and he was a bucket list character. Like to write both Dead Man and Constantine, and then I'm doing something for a Birds of Prey one-shot, and I pitched Harley Quinn, and I wanted them to pick, they ask you to pitch 3 stories, and they picked my Huntress. And I'm like, damn it, I wanted you to pick my Harley Quinn. But, it's still a story, and it's with an artist who's fantastic. So,
does it mean that you are going to be back more regularly in DC?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I could have pursued it, but I've got like 5 books going on, and kind of my focus is Outer Darkness and getting Chew up and running again. And I realized, like, I like working for DC, and just scratching that little itch was enough. But when I worked for Batman, it almost killed me, because they were giving me so many books to write, and I'm like, not primarily a superhero guy. So if I work for him here and there, like if I call that editor and be like, hey, you got something for me, she would probably find something for me. I just haven't called her because I've been busy.
I was wondering what kind of Harley Quinn you would like to write, because, well, she had different approaches in recent years, because there's like classic Harley Quinn from Paul Dini and Bruce Timm, and there's Harley Quinn from Amanda Conner.
Yeah, I like the Amanda Conner stuff, I think, the most, because it's a little more innocent, and I like her as good rather than the one Batman character I really don't like is the Joker, because whenever someone plays with the Joker now, they just have to one up themselves in awfulness, and Joker will go out and he'll kill 50 people, and he's so nihilistic now, and I like classic fun superhero stuff. I want the Joker to be more fun and not necessarily just a crazed nihilistic murderer.
Okay, so not the crazy killer clown, but that funny clown, like in those classic stories when with Joker did a lot of boners.
Yeah, or just yeah. Or just some balance. It doesn't have to be Batman 66, but I don't want Joker cutting off his face. That's not the kind of story I want to read.
So your Harley Quinn would be like more like Amanda Conner stuff.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
more kind of Deadpoolish, just kind of fun.
Do you think, like, right now, and it's more canon right now in the stories that she's with Poison Ivy. So would you include also her relationship with Poison Ivy, or just only?
I love Poison Ivy. I would love to, but keep in mind I only pitched an 8-page story. But I mean, if I got to write Harley Quinn, I would keep the Poison Ivy stuff just because I like Poison Ivy.
Yeah, you had one story with her.
She was one of my first detective stories. Her and Clayface.
Well, she also tends to be to have a lot of different versions when she's. There's a killer version of Poison Ivy.
Well, I mean that's a good thing about Batman. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can have Batman 66, you can have Dark Knight, you can have Grim Batman, you can have animated series. Like there are I think that's kind of the appeal of Batman, and there's a lot of other, Harleys like that, Deadpool's like that. There's everyone can do their own take on the character, and the character's kind of fundamentally the same, but you can change the the tone radically. You can write a Harley Quinn story for an 8-year-old or someone an 18-year-old.
I would like to ask you about something strange, but I couldn't help myself to ask you about this. We have your Polish version of Chew, and I would like to ask you to try to read the first page with Tony Chu in Polish for us, and let's see how it will do.
Okay. Poznajek Tony'ego Chu. Tony Chu jest pławi zazwy gladny I pławi nigdy nie dzieje ano płade. Now you read.
Poznajcie Tony'ego Chu. Tony Chu jest prawie zawsze głodny I prawie nigdy nic nie je. Oto powód.
That's exactly the same. Yes. I couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah, and try this Chu one if you can.
Tony Chu just sybopate. Tu znajdzie gdy.
So Polish is difficult to you.
It's a tough language, and like public transportation doesn't have anything in English. Once you get on the bus, like you use the ticket thing, you can an English version, but it's traveling Poland's a challenge.
Well, also for Polish people, because we don't have idle public transportation. There's a lot of Chew in other language than English.
We're in 12 languages.
12 languages.
Yeah. We're not in any Asian language, and I think they've got their own comics, or they pirate stuff. But like we're in. Let's see if I can rattle them all off: English, Polish, German, Italian, French, Spanish, Mexican Spanish, Turkish, Czechoslovakian. That's 9.
Yeah.
Portuguese.
Oh, okay.
And something else.
Okay, but there are few examples when they translated the title.
In Portugal and in France, it's Tony Chu Detective Cannibal, which is weird because my Polish and Portuguese publisher is the exact same publisher, but it's Chu in Polish and.
Translating Chew into Polish would be a very strange thing to do.
Russian is our final version.
I thought you mentioned it, but yeah.
And where every other country, collects 5 issues at a time and follows our soft cover. Yeah. And of course, you guys do more beautiful versions. You do hardcovers, and they're just better. Russia follows our omnivore format, so it's the oversized 10-issue hardcovers, and they're beautiful. And not only that, when they, because Russian is like Polish, there's like all kinds of weird characters that make no sense to me. But they even do, like, they figure out what font I used for the sound effects, and they do like Russian versions of the sound effects, but they look accurate, and the Russian versions are just amazing. But then now they're to like volume 3 and the bad guy is Russian. And that feels kind of awkward. It's like, oh, I hope you don't think I don't like Russians.
Okay, John, thank you very much for speaking with us. It
Anytime.
was a great honor to have you, and I hope we will see you soon again next year. And
all right. You got to tell me where to come next.
yes, definitely, and I hope we will have a Polish version of Other Darkness. It's a great book. If you didn't know it, check it out. 11 issue will be released.
11, it's probably at my doorstep right now.
All right.
And we're going to do 3 seasons. And, you know, issue 12 is the end of the first season, then take a break. And each season is very radically different. The status quo changes. I mean, essentially, season 1 is the next generation. Season 2 is going to be something different.
All right, so check it out, and thank you very much once again.
Yeah.
And see you soon.
Yes.
I hope.